The crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead as dozens of wealthy guests filled the penthouse, their laughter and conversations creating a buzz that seemed to bounce off the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars, but inside, everything was about glamour and status. Women wore dresses that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and men adjusted their designer watches between sips of champagne that probably cost $100 a bottle. Robert Chen stood near the balcony, watching it all with a feeling he couldn't quite shake. He'd organized this charity gala himself, invited all these people, arranged for the best caterers and the finest drinks. Everything was perfect, exactly as it should be. Yet something felt missing. Maybe it was because these events had become routine for him over the years. Another party, another cause, another evening of small talk with people who measured success in zeros on a bank statement. He'd come a long way from the kid who grew up in a cramped apartment in Queens, watching his mother work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. Now he owned this penthouse, ran a tech company worth billions, and had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. His mother would have been proud, he thought. Or maybe she would have told him he was losing sight of what really mattered. She always had a way of cutting through his nonsense. His eyes drifted to the far corner of the room where his mother's grand piano sat, untouched and gleaming. He'd had it moved here after she passed away 3 years ago, thinking he'd find someone to play it, thinking it would bring life to this space the way it had brought life to her small living room. But it just sat there, beautiful and silent, like an expensive piece of furniture. Nobody at these parties actually played anymore. They just admired it, commented on how magnificent it was, and moved on to the next conversation. That's when he noticed her, a young woman in a simple black and white catering uniform, carrying a tray of appetizers through the crowd. There was nothing particularly remarkable about her at first glance. She was doing her job, smiling politely at guests, offering them food with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. But as she walked past the piano, something changed. Her steps slowed just for a moment. Her eyes lingered on the instrument with a look that Robert recognized instantly, because he'd seen it on his mother's face countless times. It wasn't admiration or casual interest. It was longing, deep aching longing. And then, so briefly that most people would have missed it, her fingers moved, not reaching out to touch the piano, but moving in the air beside the tray she carried, as if they were pressing invisible keys, playing a song only she could hear. The gesture lasted maybe 2 seconds before she caught herself, straightened up and continued walking. But Robert couldn't look away. In that tiny moment, he'd seen something real in a room full of carefully constructed personas, something genuine in a sea of pretense. He found himself moving toward her without really deciding to, weaving through clusters of guests who tried to catch his attention, offering polite nods but not stopping. The woman was near the kitchen entrance now, her empty tray hanging at her side as she waited for the next round of food to come out. "Excuse me," Robert said, and she turned, her professional smile snapping into place. "Yes, sir. Can I get you something?" Her voice was pleasant but tired around the edges. "That piano over there," he gestured toward the corner. "Do you play?" The smile faltered. Her eyes widened slightly and a flush crept up her neck. I used to a long time ago." "Why do you ask? I saw you looking at it. The way your fingers moved." He kept his voice gentle, not wanting to embarrass her. "That's not how someone who just appreciates pianos looks at one. That's how someone who misses playing looks at one." She glanced down, seeming uncomfortable with being noticed. "It's been years, really." "I barely remember. How many years?" 7. The answer came out quiet, almost reluctant. 7 years since I've really played." Robert felt something stir in his chest, a mix of curiosity and something else he couldn't name. "Would you play something now for me?" Her head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. "Oh no, I couldn't. I'm working and I don't. I'm not dressed for—" She looked around at the elegantly dressed guests, then down at her catering uniform. "This isn't appropriate." "Says who?" Robert asked. "It's my party, my piano, and I'm asking you to play." By now, a few nearby guests had noticed their conversation. Robert Chen talking intently to one of the catering staff was unusual enough to draw attention. People began to turn, to watch, their conversations dropping to whispers. The woman noticed it too, and the panic in her eyes intensified. "Please, I really can't. I need to get back to work. My supervisor is already taken care of," Robert said, having caught the eye of the catering manager and given a subtle nod. You won't get in trouble, I promise. Please, when's the last time you touched a piano? She bit her lip, and he saw her eyes drift back to the instrument. The longing was there again, stronger now, fighting with fear and embarrassment. I can't afford to lose this job, she whispered. I need the money. You won't lose anything, he assured her. I give you my word. Just one song. That's all I'm asking. The crowd was gathering now, forming a loose circle, phones beginning to emerge from pockets and purses. The woman looked trapped, caught between desire and terror, between a dream she'd buried and the reality she lived in. Her hands were shaking slightly at her sides. Robert could see her struggling with the decision. Part of him wondered if he was being cruel, putting her on the spot like this, but another part of him, the part that still remembered being hungry and ambitious and full of dreams, knew that sometimes people needed a push. Sometimes they needed someone to see them and give them permission to be more than their circumstances. What's your name? He asked softly. Lily, she said. Lily Martinez. Lily, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been to hundreds of parties like this. I've heard professional pianists play that instrument, but I have a feeling that whatever you play, even if you're rusty, even if you make mistakes, it will be the most real thing that's happened in this room all night. And I think we could all use a little real. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for mockery or ulterior motives. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because slowly, very slowly, she nodded. The walk to the piano felt like walking through water. Every step seemed to take forever, and Lily could feel every single pair of eyes on her back. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. She caught snippets of conversations as she passed. Is that really happening? Who is she? This is so awkward. Someone's recording this. That last comment made her stomach drop. Recording. Of course they were recording. In a room full of wealthy people with expensive phones, looking for the next interesting thing to post on social media. If she messed this up, if she embarrassed herself, it wouldn't just be in front of these people. It could be everywhere by tomorrow morning. Her hands felt clammy. She wiped them on her uniform pants, immediately regretting it when she remembered how many people were watching. Everything she did was being observed, judged, probably laughed at. A waitress thinking she could sit at a piano worth more than her annual salary and play for billionaires. Who did she think she was? But Robert was walking beside her, calm and unbothered by the attention. He pulled out the piano bench and gestured for her to sit. The leather was soft, probably real leather, the kind that costs a fortune. She lowered herself onto it carefully, as if it might break under her weight. The piano loomed in front of her, enormous and intimidating. The keys seemed to glow under the chandelier light, perfect and pristine. She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen a piano this beautiful, probably at the conservatory, back when she still had dreams of concert halls and standing ovations. Take your time, Robert said quietly, and then he stepped back, giving her space. Lily's hands hovered over the keys, not quite touching them. Her fingers trembled so badly she had to pull them back and clasp them in her lap. This was insane. What was she doing? 7 years. She hadn't played seriously in 7 years. Sure, she'd occasionally touched a keyboard in a store when no one was looking, or played a few notes on her phone app late at night when she couldn't sleep. But this was different. This was real. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe, tried to remember why she'd loved this in the first place. It wasn't about fancy parties or impressing rich people. It was about the music itself, about the way notes could say things that words couldn't, about the feeling of losing yourself in something bigger than your problems, bigger than your fears. Her mother used to tell her that music was like breathing. You didn't think about it, you just did it. And when you stopped, part of you died. Lily had stopped breathing 7 years ago, and she hadn't even realized how much of herself had died with it until this moment. She thought about her father, lying in a hospital bed across town, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed, the medical bills that never stopped coming, the insurance that covered almost nothing, the reason she worked 3 jobs and still barely made ends meet. He used to come to all her recitals, sitting in the front row with tears in his eyes, so proud of his little girl who could make magic with her fingers. What would he say if he could see her right now? Probably that she should play, that she should never let fear stop her from being who she really was. That money and survival were important, but so was the soul. Lily opened her eyes and let her fingers finally touch the keys. They were cool and smooth, exactly as she remembered. For a moment, she just rested them there, feeling the connection. Then, barely aware of making the decision, she pressed down, The first note rang out clear and pure, and something inside her cracked open. She started with Chopin, one of his nocturnes. It was the piece she'd been playing when she got the phone call that her mother had collapsed at work. The piece that had been interrupted by the worst news of her life. She'd never played it again after that day. Until now. Her fingers stumbled at first, muscle memory fighting against years of neglect. She hit a wrong note, then another. She could hear people shifting behind her, the rustle of expensive fabric, the barely concealed whispers. They were probably regretting this already, probably thinking Robert had made a terrible mistake asking a waitress to play. But then something shifted. Her fingers found their rhythm, remembered the patterns they'd practiced 10,000 times. The wrong notes became fewer, farther between. And as the music began to flow, really flow, Lily stopped caring about the mistakes, stopped caring about the crowd, stopped caring about anything except the conversation happening between her hands and the keys. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed this, how much she'd needed this. Working in diners and serving drinks and cleaning tables, she'd convinced herself that part of her life was over, that dreams were for people who could afford them, and she'd used up all her chances. But sitting here now playing this beautiful instrument, she felt like she was waking up after 7 years of sleepwalking. The music poured out of her, carrying with it all the grief she'd never processed. Her mother's death, her father's illness, her younger brother struggling in school while she worked nights, the scholarship she'd abandoned, the future she'd given up. Every missed opportunity, every sacrifice, every moment she'd been too tired to cry. It all went into the music. She transitioned without thinking into something else, something she'd written herself years ago. A composition she'd never shown anyone, never performed, never finished. It had been floating around in her head incomplete for so long that she'd almost forgotten about it. But now, with her hands on real keys instead of imaginary ones, the missing pieces fell into place. The melody was melancholy but hopeful, like watching the sun rise after the worst night of your life. It spoke of loss and resilience, of breaking and rebuilding, of finding beauty in the cracks. She added layers of complexity. Let her right hand dance while her left hand grounded the piece with steady bass notes. The music swelled and softened, building to moments of intensity before pulling back into quiet reflection. Tears started running down her face, but she didn't stop to wipe them away. Her vision blurred, but her fingers knew where to go. They'd always known. She'd just forgotten to trust them. The piano responded to every emotion, every subtle pressure change, every dynamic shift. It was like speaking a language she'd thought she'd forgotten, only to discover it had been inside her all along. The room had gone completely silent. No whispers, no phone clicks, no movement. Just the music filling every corner, every space, every heart. Lily had no idea how long she'd been playing. Time had become meaningless. There was only this moment, this instrument, this release of everything she'd been holding inside. As she approached the final phrases of her improvised composition, she let the tempo slow. The notes became softer, more spaced out, like a heartbeat returning to normal after running a marathon. She played the last chord and let it ring out, sustaining the pedal, letting the sound fade naturally until there was nothing left but silence. The silence that followed felt heavier than any sound. Lily kept her hands on the keys, afraid to turn around, afraid to face whatever reaction was waiting for her. Had it been good? Had she embarrassed herself? She couldn't tell anymore. All she knew was that she'd just poured her entire heart out in front of a room full of strangers, and now she felt completely exposed. Then someone started clapping. Just one person at first, slow and steady. Then another joined in, and another. Within seconds, the entire room erupted into applause so loud it made her jump. She finally turned around, her vision still blurry with tears, and saw something she never expected. People were crying, not just one or two, but dozens of them. Women with perfect makeup now streaked with mascara. Men in expensive suits wiping their eyes with pocket squares. Some were clapping with their hands raised high. Others had their hands pressed to their chests. A few were just standing there, stunned, not moving at all. Lily felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. These people, these wealthy, sophisticated people who probably attended professional concerts all the time, were reacting like this to her, a waitress who'd been playing on muscle memory and emotion alone. Robert stepped forward and she saw that his eyes were red. He wasn't trying to hide it either. That was He started, then stopped, shaking his head. I don't have words. A woman pushed through the crowd, moving fast despite her high heels and elegant gown. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp, intelligent eyes. As she got closer, Lily's stomach dropped. She knew that face. Oh God, she knew that face. Lily Martinez, the woman said, her voice shaking slightly. Is it really you? Lily stood up from the piano bench so fast she almost knocked it over. Mrs. Kim? I can't believe it, Mrs. Kim said, stopping just a few feet away. Her hand was pressed to her mouth and tears were streaming down her face. 7 years. 7 years I've wondered what happened to you. The room had gone quiet again, everyone watching this unexpected reunion. Robert looked between them, confused but patient. You two know each other? He asked. Mrs. Kim nodded, not taking her eyes off Lily. This young woman was one of the most talented students the Manhattan Conservatory had seen in 20 years. She had a full scholarship. She was being mentored by some of the best pianists in the country. And then one day she just disappeared. No explanation. No goodbye. We tried calling, sending letters, but nothing. It was like she'd vanished. Lily felt her throat tighten. This was the conversation she'd been dreading for 7 years. The one she'd run from in her nightmares. I couldn't, she started, but the words stuck. Why? Mrs. Kim asked, and the hurt in her voice was clear. You were so gifted, Lily, you could have had everything. A career, recognition, a future. Why did you throw it all away? I didn't throw it away, Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. My mother died. The words fell into the silence like stones into water. Mrs. Kim's expression changed immediately, the hurt shifting to concern. It was sudden, Lily continued, the words coming easier now that she'd started. A heart attack at work. She was only 43. And when she died, I found out that my dad had been hiding how sick he was. He has diabetes, kidney problems, all kinds of things. He'd been putting off treatment because they couldn't afford it. My younger brother was only 14. Someone had to work. Someone had to pay the bills. Someone had to keep the family from falling apart. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, not caring anymore how she looked. The scholarship covered tuition, but it didn't cover enough for rent and food and medical bills. I took a leave of absence thinking I'd come back in a semester. But a semester became a year, and a year became 2, and before I knew it, 7 years had passed. I kept telling myself I'd go back someday, but someday never came. Mrs. Kim looked devastated. We would have helped. The conservatory has emergency funds for situations exactly like this. If you just told us I was 18 years old and terrified, Lily said. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know there were options. I just knew my family needed me right then, immediately, and music felt like a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Robert had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up. Where's your father now? St. Vincent's Hospital, Lily said. He's been there for 3 weeks. Another infection. His kidneys are failing and the doctors say he needs a transplant, but the wait list is years long and the cost... She laughed bitterly. The cost is impossible. That's why I'm here tonight, actually. I work for the catering company. I pick up shifts whenever I can. Between this and my other 2 jobs, I almost make enough to cover the medical bills. Almost. A man in an expensive suit stepped forward from the crowd. He was younger than Robert, maybe in his early 40s, with dark-rimmed glasses and an intense expression. You said you wrote that last piece yourself? The one you just played? Lily nodded, confused by the change in subject. I'm Daniel Park, he said. I own Meridian Records. We produce classical and contemporary instrumental music. That composition was extraordinary. Have you written others? Yes, but they're not finished. They're just sketches, ideas. Nothing professional. I'd like to hear them, Daniel said. All of them. And I'd like to offer you a recording contract. Lily stared at him like he'd just spoken in another language. What? A recording contract. We'd want to produce an album of your original work, with proper production, marketing, distribution. You'd make money from sales, streaming, licensing, and if you're interested, we could arrange concert bookings. Intimate venues at first, but depending on the reception. Wait, stop, Lily said, holding up her hands. Her head was spinning. This is crazy. I work in a diner. I haven't performed in 7 years. I can't just suddenly become a professional musician. Why not? Robert asked. You just proved you have the talent. Mrs. Kim can confirm you have the training. Daniel is offering you the opportunity. The only question is whether you're willing to take it. But my dad, my brother, the bills can be managed, Robert interrupted. Look, I didn't plan to announce this tonight, but I've been thinking about starting a foundation. My mother was a pianist. She died 3 years ago, and I've been looking for a way to honor her memory. What if we created something that helps artists who've had to give up their dreams for reasons beyond their control? Artists like you. Lily felt like the room was tilting. I don't understand what you're saying. I'm saying let me help, Robert said simply. Let the foundation cover your father's medical expenses. All of them. The current bills, the future treatment, everything. Let it provide financial support for you and your brother, while you go back to school or pursue this recording opportunity or whatever you choose to do. No strings attached. No repayment required. Just a chance to get back what was taken from you. You don't even know me, Lily whispered. Why would you do this? Robert smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all night. Because my mother always said that music was meant to be shared, and talent was meant to be nurtured. She would have loved what you played tonight. And because I built my company from nothing, and I remember what it's like to have doors closed in your face because of circumstances you can't control, consider this a door opening. Lily looked around the room at all these people watching her. Mrs. Kim with hope in her eyes, Daniel with his business card already in hand, Robert with an expression of quiet determination, and dozens of guests who had come here for a fancy party and ended up witnessing something none of them had expected. She thought about her father in that hospital bed, about her brother studying late at night at their tiny kitchen table, about 7 years of putting everyone else first and pushing her dreams down so deep, she'd almost forgotten they existed, and she thought about how her fingers had felt on those piano keys like coming home after being lost for years. I need to call my dad, she said finally. Before I make any decisions, I need to talk to my family. Robert led Lily to a quiet study off the main room, away from the crowd and the noise. The space was smaller, more personal, with bookshelves lining the walls and a large window overlooking the city. He handed her his phone without a word, giving her privacy by stepping toward the window. Lily's hands shook as she dialed her father's hospital room. It rang 3 times before her brother picked up. Hello? Carlos, it's me, she said, her voice cracking. Lily? Why are you calling from a different number? Is everything okay? Did something happen at work? I'm fine. Is Dad awake? Yeah, he's right here. He's been watching some game show. Hold on. She heard rustling, then her father's weak voice came through. Mija, it's late. You should be working. I am working. I was. Dad, something happened tonight. Something impossible. What's wrong? Are you in trouble? No, nothing like that. She took a deep breath. I played piano tonight, at this fancy party, and there were all these people, and Dad, I played like I used to, like back before Mom died, and they loved it. There was silence on the other end. Then her father said quietly, You played? Really played? Really played. The tears started again. And there's this man, the one who owns the penthouse where the party is. He wants to start a foundation to help artists, and he said, Dad, he said he'd pay for your medical bills, all of them. And there's a record producer here who wants to give me a recording contract, and my old coordinator from the conservatory is here too, and she said they held my scholarship spot. They waited for me. Lily, slow down. What are you talking about? Who are these people? Rich people, Dad. Really rich people who can actually help. And I don't know what to do because it feels like a dream, and I'm scared I'm going to wake up and none of it will be real. She heard her father's breathing, heavy and labored through the phone. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. Tell me exactly what happened. From the beginning. So she did. She told him about passing the piano, about Robert noticing her, about being asked to play in front of all those people. She told him about Mrs. Kim and the scholarship she'd abandoned, about Daniel and his record label, about Robert's offer to help with medical expenses and living costs. She left nothing out, even the parts where she'd cried or felt terrified. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then her father said something that surprised her. Do you remember what your mother used to tell you before every recital? Lily smiled through her tears. She said that fear and excitement feel the same in your body. The only difference is what story you tell yourself about it. Exactly. And right now you're telling yourself a fear story, that this can't be real, that it's too good to be true, that you don't deserve it. But what if you told yourself an excitement story instead? What if you let yourself believe that good things can happen to good people? But what if they're lying? What if this is some kind of joke? Then you'll survive it just like you've survived everything else, and her father said firmly. But what if they're not lying? What if this is your chance to get back everything you gave up for us? Would you really walk away from that because you're afraid? I gave it up because you needed me. And I'm telling you now that I need you to take this chance, he said. Lily, for 7 years I've watched you work yourself to exhaustion. 3 jobs, no sleep, no life of your own. You've been taking care of everyone except yourself. And the guilt has been eating me alive because I know you gave up your dreams for me. Dad, let me finish. I'm your father. I'm supposed to protect you, provide for you, make sure you have opportunities. Instead, you've been taking care of me. And while I'm grateful, while I love you more than anything, it's not how it's supposed to be. If these people are offering you a way out, a way forward, you need to take it. Not just for you, but for me too. Because I can't die knowing I'm the reason you never became who you were meant to be. Don't talk about dying, Lily said, her voice breaking. I'm not being dramatic, Mija. I'm being realistic. My kidneys are failing. We both know the transplant list is long and my odds aren't great. But if this foundation can help, if they can get me better care, maybe I'll have more time. And I want to use that time watching you play again. Really play. Not just dream about it. Lily pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back sobs. Carlos, are you still there? Her father called out. Yeah, I'm here. Her brother's voice came through, closer now. Tell your sister what you think. Carlos took the phone. At 17, he sounded more mature than he should have to be. Lily, take the deal. Take all of it. If these people can help Dad and give you a chance to actually live your life, why wouldn't you? Because what if it doesn't work out? What if the foundation isn't real, or the recording contract falls through? Then you'll still be exactly where you are now, Carlos said. Working 3 jobs and barely surviving. You won't have lost anything. But if it does work out, everything changes. For all of us. That's not even a hard choice. Lily looked up to find Robert still standing by the window, giving her space but present if she needed him. Mrs. Kim had joined him at some point, and they were talking quietly. Daniel was there too, looking at his phone but clearly waiting. I'm scared, Lily admitted. Good, her father said, back on the line. That means it matters. Now go back out there and say yes before they change their minds. And Lily, I'm so proud of you. Your mother would be too. The call ended, and Lily stood there holding Robert's phone, feeling like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind her was everything she knew. Hard work, struggle, exhaustion, but at least it was familiar. Ahead was unknown territory, full of possibility but also uncertainty. She walked back to where the 3 of them stood waiting. Mrs. Kim's face was anxious. Daniel looked professionally neutral. Robert just looked patient and kind. My father said I should say yes, Lily told them. Before you change your minds, Robert smiled. We're not going to change our minds. But I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. The foundation will cover all medical expenses for your father. We'll also provide a monthly stipend for living expenses so you don't have to work 3 jobs anymore. In exchange, all I ask is that when you're back on your feet, when you've rebuilt your career, you help us identify other talented people who need support. You become part of the mission. And the recording contract, Daniel added, would be a standard deal. You'd work with our producers to record your original compositions. We'd handle distribution and marketing. You'd get royalties from sales and streaming. No hidden clauses, no tricks. Just a straightforward agreement between a label and an artist. Mrs. Kim stepped forward. And the conservatory would love to have you back. Your scholarship can be reinstated. You could finish your degree or just use the facilities to practice and work on your music. Whatever you need. We've missed you, Lily. The program hasn't been the same without you. Lily looked at each of them, these people who an hour ago had been strangers, and now were offering to change her entire life. She thought about her mother, who'd worked herself to death trying to give her daughter opportunities. About her father, lying in a hospital bed telling her to be brave. About Carlos growing up too fast because his sister had to be the responsible one, and she thought about herself. About the girl who'd loved music more than anything, who'd dreamed of concert halls and standing ovations. The girl who'd buried those dreams so deep she'd almost forgotten what hope felt like. Okay, she said. Yes, I'm saying yes to all of it. The relief on their faces was immediate and genuine. Mrs. Kim actually clapped her hands together. Daniel nodded approvingly and pulled out his business card. Robert extended his hand for a handshake, and when Lily took it, he said something that made her eyes well up again. "Welcome back to your life." The party had continued in the other room, but when they returned, people swarmed them immediately. Everyone wanted to talk to her, to tell her how moving her performance had been, to offer connections and opportunities. Business cards appeared from everywhere. A gallery owner wanted to host a concert. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. A music teacher offered to give her refresher lessons for free. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. Lily felt like she was in someone else's life, watching it happen to someone else. But every time she felt panic rising, she'd catch Robert's eye, or Mrs. Kim would appear at her elbow, or Daniel would redirect an overeager guest, and she'd remember she wasn't alone in this. Around midnight, as the party finally started to wind down, Lily found herself back at the piano. But this time she wasn't performing. She was just sitting there, her fingers resting on the keys, feeling the weight of everything that had changed in just a few hours. 3 months later, Lily stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone in the building could probably hear it. Through the curtain, she could hear the murmur of the crowd filling the seats. Sold out. Every single ticket gone within 48 hours of going on sale. She pressed her hand against her stomach, trying to calm the butterflies that felt more like eagles at this point. This was it, the moment she'd dreamed about as a kid, the moment she thought she'd lost forever, and now it was actually happening. In 10 minutes, she'd walk out onto that stage and play for hundreds of people who'd paid real money to hear her music. "You're going to be amazing," Mrs. Kim said, appearing beside her with a bottle of water. "I've heard you practice every day for the past 3 months. You're more than ready." "What if I forget everything the moment I sit down?" Lily asked, taking the water with shaking hands. "Then you'll improvise just like you did at Robert's party. That's what made you special in the first place. You don't just play notes on a page. You play what you feel." The past 3 months had been the strangest, most wonderful, most exhausting period of Lily's entire life. Robert's foundation had moved faster than she'd thought possible. Within a week, her father had been transferred to a better hospital, with specialists who actually had experience with his condition. The bills had been paid in full, every single one, including the ones that had been sent to collections years ago. Even more miraculous, they'd found him a kidney donor. A match had become available sooner than anyone expected, and with the foundation covering all costs, they'd been able to move forward immediately. The transplant had happened 6 weeks ago, and her father was recovering better than the doctors had dared to hope. He was in the audience tonight, sitting in the front row with Carlos beside him. Lily had quit 2 of her 3 jobs. She'd kept 1 shift a week at the diner, not because she needed the money, but because the owner had been kind to her over the years, and she couldn't just abandon him. Plus, it kept her grounded, reminded her where she'd come from. The conservatory had welcomed her back like she'd never left. Mrs. Kim had personally overseen her reintegration, making sure she had access to practice rooms, connecting her with other musicians, helping her polish pieces she'd been working on. Lily had spent hours every day at the piano, retraining her fingers, rebuilding her stamina, remembering what it felt like to be a serious musician instead of someone who just dreamed about it. Daniel's team at Meridian Records had been incredible too. They'd recorded 5 of her original compositions, bringing in sound engineers and producers who understood how to capture the emotion she poured into every note. The album was set to release next month, and the advance reviews had been shockingly positive. One critic had called her the most exciting new voice in contemporary classical music. But more than any of that, more than the opportunities or the money or the praise, Lily had gotten her family back. Real family time, not just exhausted conversations between shifts. Sunday dinners where they actually sat together and talked, watching Carlos's basketball games, visiting her father in the hospital every day, seeing color return to his face, hearing him laugh again. 5 minutes, a stage manager called out. Lily's mouth went dry. She'd performed at smaller venues over the past few weeks, intimate concerts that Daniel had arranged to build buzz and help her get comfortable performing again. But this was different. This was Carnegie Hall. This was the dream. Robert appeared from somewhere in the backstage chaos, looking calm and confident in his suit. He'd been at every practice session, every small concert, always supportive but never intrusive. The foundation had grown faster than either of them had anticipated. They'd already helped 12 other artists get back to their crafts, and applications were coming in from all over the country. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm terrified," Lily admitted. "What if they hate it? What if I'm not as good as everyone thinks I am?" "Then you'll still be better than you were 3 months ago," Robert said. "And 3 months from now, you'll be better than you are today. That's how growth works. But for what it's worth, I've never been more certain of anything. You're going to walk out there and remind everyone why music matters." Daniel joined them, checking his watch. "The press is out there. Major outlets. This is going to be big, Lily. Just remember, play for yourself first. Everything else is secondary." Mrs. Kim adjusted the collar of Lily's dress, a simple but elegant black gown that made her feel like a real concert pianist. "Your mother would have been so proud," she said softly. "I wish she could see this." "I think she can," Lily said, surprised by how much she meant it. The stage manager motioned to her. It was time. Lily walked to the edge of the curtain, took one last deep breath, and stepped out onto the stage. The lights were bright, almost blinding after the darkness backstage. The audience was a sea of faces, hundreds of people all looking at her, waiting. She spotted her father and Carlos immediately, sitting exactly where they'd said they'd be. Her father had tears already streaming down his face, and he was clutching Carlos's hand. She walked to the piano and sat down, adjusting the bench the way she'd done thousands of times before. The instrument was perfect, a Steinway that had been played by legends. Her hands rested on the keys, and for just a moment she let herself remember everything. The little girl practicing scales in a cramped apartment. The teenager winning competitions. The young woman who'd given it all up to save her family. The waitress who'd forgotten how to dream. And now finally, the artist who'd found her way back. She began to play. The opening piece was one she'd written during those first overwhelming weeks after Robert's party. It was called Second Chances, and it told the story of everything she'd been through without using a single word. The note spoke of loss and grief, of sacrifice and survival, of despair and hope and the courage it takes to begin again. The audience disappeared. The pressure disappeared. Everything disappeared except the music and the story she was telling through it. Her fingers moved with confidence and emotion, dancing across the keys with the kind of freedom that only comes when you've lost something precious and somehow managed to get it back. She played for 45 minutes straight, moving through her original compositions with barely a pause between them. Each piece told a different part of her journey, and together they formed a narrative that everyone in the audience could feel, even if they couldn't put it into words. When she played the final note of her last piece, she let it ring out just like she had at Robert's party. The sound faded into silence, and for a moment no one moved. Then the applause started, and it was like a wave crashing over her. People stood up, filling the hall with sound that seemed to shake the very walls. Her father was on his feet. Carlos was cheering, and even from the stage she could see that half the audience was crying. Lily stood and bowed, overwhelmed by the response. But as she straightened up, she caught sight of Robert, Mrs. Kim, and Daniel standing in the wings, all three of them beaming with pride. And she realized that this moment, as incredible as it was, wasn't the end of anything. It was just the beginning. After the concert, there was a small reception. People crowded around her, wanting to talk, to congratulate her, to tell her how her music had moved them. Journalists asked for interviews. Other musicians wanted to collaborate. It was everything she'd dreamed of and more. But the moment that mattered most came late in the evening when her father pulled her aside, still weak from surgery but stronger than he'd been in years. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The night your mother died, the last thing she said to me was, 'Make sure Lily plays.' I didn't understand at the time because we were in the emergency room and nothing made sense. But I think she knew. I think she knew that no matter what happened, you needed music in your life. And tonight, watching you up there, I finally kept that promise to her." Lily hugged him carefully, mindful of his healing incision, and let herself cry on his shoulder. All the years of struggle, all the sacrifice, all the dreams deferred had led to this moment. Not just the concert, but this connection with her father, this sense that everything had happened exactly as it needed to. Later, as the reception wound down and people started to leave, Lily found herself back at the piano one more time. Robert sat down on the bench beside her, not saying anything, just keeping her company. "Thank you," she said finally, "for seeing me that night, for giving me a chance when I couldn't give one to myself." "You don't need to thank me," Robert said. "You did this. All I did was open a door. You're the one who walked through it." Lily played a few soft notes, nothing structured, just gentle sounds in the quiet hall. "The foundation is getting so many applications. There are so many people out there like me, stuck between their dreams and survival." "I know," Robert said, "and we're going to help as many as we can. That's the mission now. That's what my mother would have wanted. That's what your story showed is possible." As Lily sat there in the empty Carnegie Hall, her fingers touching the keys that had carried her back to herself, she thought about all the other artists out there working 3 jobs, dreaming of moments like this, wondering if they'd ever get their chance, and she made a silent promise to do everything she could to help them find their way back too. Because if a waitress could go from serving appetizers to playing Carnegie Hall in 3 months, then anything was possible. Sometimes all people needed was someone to see them, to believe in them, and to give them permission to believe in themselves again. The lights in the hall began to dim, signaling it was time to leave. But Lily played one last chord before standing, letting it echo through the empty space like a promise, like a beginning, like hope made audible in the darkness.